Nathan Brooks was 24, a restless soul with a heart full of wanderlust, always yearning for something beyond the ordinary. He loved the outdoors, where the hustle of city life faded, and he could hear his own thoughts. In the summer of 2012, he packed his hiking gear, tent, sleeping bag, a small stove, and a tattered notebook filled with his musings, and left his modest apartment in Roanoke, Virginia. His plan, as he told his sister Clara, was to hike through the Blue Ridge Mountains, perhaps heading toward the Shenandoah Valley. But Nathan never left Virginia. Instead, he ventured deep into the Blue Ridge Parkway, a vast wilderness of rolling hills, misty peaks, and winding streams that seemed to whisper secrets from centuries past. On June 15, 2012, Nathan was last seen by a fellow hiker, Margaret Cole, near the Humpback Rocks trailhead. Margaret, a retired school teacher, noticed Nathan adjusting his heavy backpack, his face flushed but determined. He seemed tired but eager, she later told park rangers. I offered him some granola, but he just nodded, smiled, and kept walking. That same evening, around 9 p.m., a truck driver on Route 60 reported seeing a hiker with a large pack crossing a bridge near Buena Vista. The hiker's silhouette matched Nathan's, but the driver didn't stop, assuming it was just another adventurer. The final sighting came at dawn on June 16th, when a park volunteer, James Harper, spotted Nathan on a narrow path near Crabtree Falls. Nathan was trudging uphill, his boots muddy, his pack swaying slightly. James waved, but Nathan didn't respond, his eyes fixed on the trail ahead. Later that day, James drove back down the mountain and noticed something odd near mile marker 27 on the Blue Ridge Parkway. Nathan's backpack was there, resting against a pine tree, with his gear neatly laid out on a green tarp. A small campfire, long extinguished, sat nearby, and 6 smooth stones were arranged in a perfect circle, each about the size of a fist, embedded in the soft dirt. The scene was strange, too orderly for an emergency. The backpack was unzipped, revealing Nathan's notebook, its pages fluttering in the breeze. The last entry, dated 2 days earlier, read, "The mountains are calling. I feel something big waiting for me." There were no signs of a struggle, no torn gear, no footprints leading away, no blood. It was as if Nathan had simply stepped into the forest and vanished. Park rangers found the site on June 17, 2012. Ranger Emily Watson, a seasoned officer with 15 years in the Blue Ridge, was puzzled by the stone's precise arrangement. It looked intentional, she noted in her report, wondering if they were a marker, a ritual, or just Nathan's way of leaving a trace. She called for a search team, suspecting Nathan might have wandered toward Crabtree Falls, a 70-foot cascade known for its slippery rocks and strong currents. The falls were treacherous in June, swollen with summer rains. A person could slip and be swept away in seconds. But a thorough search of the falls and nearby streams turned up nothing. No tracks, no clothing, no body. Search dogs, trained to pick up human scent, circled the tarp, but lost the trail just a few yards into the woods. Nathan Brooks was gone, leaving only his gear and those 6 mysterious stones. For 4 days, no one reported Nathan missing. His backpack sat by the trail, assumed to belong to a hiker on a brief detour. It wasn't until June 20th that Ranger Watson found a crumpled note in Nathan's pack with a phone number scribbled on it. She called Clara Brooks, Nathan's older sister, who lived in Lynchburg, Virginia. Clara was devastated. She drove to the park that evening, her mind racing with questions. Nathan loved the outdoors, always texting her photos of sunsets or streams during his hikes. Why hadn't he checked in? Their aunt, Lillian Brooks, a retired nurse from Richmond, joined Clara at the park the next morning, her practical nature steadying Clara's nerves. They learned the search was delayed, budget cuts had reduced staff, and a recent storm had washed out parts of the parkway, pulling resources away. Nathan's case was labeled a possible voluntary disappearance, which infuriated Clara. He wouldn't just leave, she told Ranger Watson. He loved life, even if he was searching for something. Clara and Lillian refused to sit idle. Clara hiked the trails near Crabtree Falls, calling Nathan's name until her throat was raw. Lillian, despite her age, scoured the riverbanks, her flashlight sweeping over rocks and roots where Nathan might have fallen. The family was frustrated by the park's slow response. volunteer search teams needed permits, which were stalled in red tape. A local search and rescue group with trained dogs was turned away because they weren't certified by the park. Clara confronted Ranger Watson at the visitor center, her voice shaking. "We're Nathan Brooks' family and we deserve a real search." Watson promised to escalate the case, but little changed. 5 days had passed since Nathan's disappearance, critical time in a missing person case, and the trail was growing cold. Lillian, practical but determined, waded into the shallow streams feeding Crabtree Falls, her boots slipping on mossy rocks. She checked behind boulders and under overhangs, places where a body might be caught. The water was icy, even in summer, and she shivered as she searched. Clara, meanwhile, pored over Nathan's notebook, looking for clues. Its pages were filled with sketches of mountain peaks, quotes from poets like Whitman, and reflections on silence. One entry stood out, underlined in blue ink. "The world is too noisy. I need the mountains to hear myself." Another quoted Psalm 46, "Be still and know that I am God." Clara wondered if Nathan, who'd been distant since their parents' divorce 5 years earlier, had come to the Blue Ridge not just to hike, but to find peace. The divorce had hit Nathan hard. The family's cozy home in Richmond, where he'd spent summers reading on the porch, was sold to cover debts. At 24, he was drifting, unsure of his place in the world. He'd worked odd jobs in Roanoke, barista, bookstore clerk, but nothing felt right. Clara remembered how he'd talk about finding his path, his eyes bright with a mix of hope and uncertainty. The notebook suggested he saw the Blue Ridge as more than a trail. It was a place to reset, to seek something bigger than himself. The 6 stones arranged in a circle haunted Clara. Were they a sign he meant to return? A symbol of something spiritual? Or just a quirk of his restless mind? By June 22, 2012, a week after Nathan vanished, the search finally gained momentum, but it was still underfunded. Ranger Watson organized a small team to comb the riverbanks and trails near Crabtree Falls, but a downed tree blocking a major path diverted attention. Clara and Lillian kept searching, joined by a few local volunteers who'd heard about the case. Clara hiked miles each day, her boots caked in mud, shouting Nathan's name into the misty valleys. Lillian, her hands scratched from pushing through briars, checked every crevice along the streams. A pair of search dogs brought in on June 23rd picked up a faint scent near a rocky outcrop downstream, raising hopes, but divers found nothing. The scent could have drifted from anywhere, a cruel tease. The park's bureaucracy frustrated the family. A Virginia National Guard unit offered to fly a helicopter over the dense forest, but the park declined, citing regulations. A local hiking club with tracking experience was turned away for lack of official credentials. Lillian, her patience worn thin, confronted Ranger Watson at the visitor center. "My nephew is out there, and you're tying our hands with paperwork." Watson sympathized but could only promise to push for more resources. Clara felt the weight of each passing day. "Every hour we lose," she told Lillian, "is an hour we might not find him." Clara and Lillian expanded their search beyond the park. Nathan had been fascinated by off-grid living, once talking about joining a community in West Virginia. Clara drove to Harrisonburg, checking hostels and co-ops where Nathan might have gone under an alias. She showed his photo, a smiling young man with sandy hair and bright green eyes, to farmers and shopkeepers, but no one recognized him. Lillian contacted a friend in the Virginia State Police, hoping for a lead, but the case was still considered a low-priority walkaway. Back in the Blue Ridge, Clara met with a group of local hunters who knew the mountains better than most rangers. They suggested Nathan might have encountered wildlife. A bobcat or bear could have startled him off the trail, but no claw marks or animal tracks were found near his pack. Theories multiplied. Had Nathan slipped into the falls and been swept away? Crabtree Falls was notorious for accidents, its rocks slick with algae. Experts said a body wouldn't travel far in the shallow, rocky streams, yet nothing was found. Another theory was darker. Nathan's easy charm and good looks made him stand out. Could someone have seen him alone on the trail and taken advantage? Clara walked the streets of Buena Vista, showing Nathan's photo to diner waitresses and gas station clerks. One bartender claimed to have seen a young man like Nathan on June 14th, but the lead went nowhere. the 6 stones remained the heart of the mystery. A local historian Clara met at a coffee shop suggested they might be tied to old Appalachian traditions, where stones mark trails or memorials. But Nathan had no known connection to such practices. A geologist volunteering with the search proposed the stones could be a personal marker, perhaps pointing to a destination Nathan had in mind. Clara clung to this idea, focusing her searches on the rugged peaks above Crabtree Falls, like Humpback Rocks and Wintergreen Mountain, where summer storms could turn trails into mazes of mud and roots. By August 2012, the park shifted to a passive search, meaning no new resources unless fresh evidence emerged. For Clara, this was a betrayal. She quit her job as a librarian in Lynchburg, using her savings to fund the search. She and Lillian rented a small cabin near the parkway, living off canned soup and coffee. Clara learned to read topographic maps, marking areas she'd search with a red pen. Lillian, despite arthritis in her knees, hiked shorter trails, her flashlight sweeping the underbrush for any sign, a scrap of fabric, a lost boot. Clara even bought a kayak to paddle the streams feeding the falls, checking narrow channels where a body might be caught. Every ripple held hope, and every dead end broke her heart. The search stretched into 2013. Clara's cabin became a base camp, its walls covered with maps and photos of Nathan. She'd lost weight, her face lined with worry, but her determination grew. Lillian, now in her late 60s, kept up as best she could, her practical nature grounding Clara's desperation. "We'll find him," Lillian would say, squeezing Clara's hand, "or we'll find what he was looking for." Clara pored over Nathan's notebook, its pages now fragile from constant handling. An entry from a month before his disappearance read, "I want to stand on a peak and feel the world fall away." Another quoted Thoreau, "Not till we are lost do we begin to find ourselves." Clara wondered if Nathan had come to the Blue Ridge to lose himself intentionally, seeking a truth he couldn't find in Roanoke. In 2014, a hiker reported seeing a man resembling Nathan near Raven's Roost, 15 miles from Crabtree Falls. Clara drove there overnight, her heart pounding, only to find the man was a local teacher on a day hike. In Waynesboro, a shopkeeper claimed a quiet hiker had bought supplies in early June 2012, but the description was vague. Each false lead chipped away at Clara's hope, but she refused to stop. Lillian, meanwhile, connected with a group of retired rangers who volunteered to search remote trails. They found traces of human presence, a rusted can, a frayed rope, but nothing linked to Nathan. By 2016, Clara's life was the search. She lived in the cabin year-round, working part-time at a local bookstore to cover expenses. Her hands were calloused from climbing rocks, her boots worn thin from endless hikes. She'd faced storms, wild animals, and near falls on steep trails, but the thought of Nathan kept her going. "He's my brother," she told Lillian. "I can't leave him out there." Lillian, her health declining, spent more time in the cabin, organizing maps and contacting leads. She called Clara every night, her voice a steady anchor. "You're doing what he'd want," she said. "He'd be proud." In 2018, Clara met a retired park ranger, Tom Grayson, who'd followed Nathan's case. Tom suggested Nathan might have been disoriented, perhaps from dehydration or exhaustion, causing him to wander off trail. But Nathan was no novice. He'd hiked with Clara since their teens, learning navigation from their father, who'd passed away years earlier. Clara considered foul play, remembering Nathan's warm smile and trusting nature. She checked rumors of transient camps near the parkway, showing Nathan's photo to anyone who'd listen. A trucker in Lexington claimed to have given a young hiker a ride in 2012, but the details didn't match. The 6 stones lingered in Clara's mind. She visited the site often, though the stones had been scattered by weather or passers-by. She'd sit by the tarp's old spot, reading Nathan's notebook, trying to feel his presence. The circle of stones felt like a message, a closed loop, perhaps symbolizing completion. Nathan had been spiritual, though not religious, often talking about the universe's bigger plan. Clara wondered if the stones were his way of marking a moment, a step into something new. On July 12, 2025, a group of botanists studying wildflowers near Priest Mountain, a remote peak at 4,000 feet, found human remains in a secluded meadow. 10 miles from where Nathan's backpack was found. The site was off-trail, surrounded by dense laurel thickets, with views of the rolling Blue Ridge. The bones were weathered, scattered by animals, but a backpack nearby held a knife, a waterlogged journal, and a small wooden carving of a bird, something Nathan had made years earlier. Dental records confirmed it was Nathan. The county coroner listed the cause of death as inconclusive, likely hypothermia or exposure, but the location raised questions. In June 2012, Priest Mountain would have been lush but stormy, its trails muddy and treacherous. Why had Nathan climbed so far from the parkway? Clara hiked to the site alone, ignoring Ranger Watson's advice to stay away. "He's my brother," she told her. "I need to see where he was." The meadow was peaceful, wildflowers swaying in the breeze, the horizon stretching toward the Shenandoah Valley. Clara knelt by the spot, touching the earth where Nathan had died. The journal, its pages brittle, was open to a page with a single line. "I found the quiet I was looking for." A passage from Psalm 23 was circled nearby. "He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul." Clara wept, not just for her loss, but for the peace Nathan might have found. The discovery answered some questions, but deepened the mystery. Why climb a remote peak instead of staying near the falls? Why leave his gear so exposed with 6 stones in a circle? Had the stones been a farewell, a marker of his journey's end? Dr. Ellen Harper, a search and rescue consultant, offered insight. "Some people seek the high places," she said. "They climb towards something greater, not safety. Nathan's journal, his stones, they suggest he was on a quest for meaning. The stones, she theorized, might have been a personal ritual, a circle to mark the end of one life and the start of another." Clara never returned to Lynchburg. She kept the cabin, living simply near the Blue Ridge, where she felt closest to Nathan. Each summer, she hiked to Priest Mountain, placing a small stone in the meadow where he was found. The pile grew, a quiet tribute to her brother's journey. Lillian, now too frail to hike, visited when she could, her eyes bright with pride for Clara's strength. "You kept him alive," she told Clara. "In your heart, he's still here." The Blue Ridge Mountains held Nathan's story, their misty peaks and winding streams a reminder of the wild's power to both hide and reveal. Nathan's tale became a legend among hikers, a story of a young man who sought silence and found it on a distant peak. Clara found solace in her annual pilgrimage, the hike to Priest Mountain, a way to connect with Nathan. She'd sit in the meadow, the wind carrying the scent of wildflowers, and talk to her brother. "You found your place," she'd whisper, imagining his smile. The mountains had taken Nathan, but they'd given him peace, and Clara a way to keep him close. Nathan Brooks' story is more than a mystery. It's a reminder of the human need to seek, to wander, to find meaning in the wild. The 6 stones in a circle were not a cry for help, but a symbol of Nathan's heart, guiding him to a meadow where the world's noise fell away. For Clara, the Blue Ridge became a place of love and memory, where Nathan's spirit lingered in the breeze. Her search ended not with answers, but with a deeper bond, a connection to her brother that time could not break. In the quiet of the mountains, Clara found her own peace, knowing Nathan had found his. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more tales of adventure and mystery.